Hey, I'm Seth from the Raleigh Wine Shop, and I'm here with good friend of the shop, Jean-Christian Rostagni. How is my pronunciation there, Jean?
It's good, Seth. Thank you
As,
very much.
as good as a New Yorker could do. Anyway, Jean-Christian, not only a good friend of the shop, he, uh, he is a professional photographer. He is a master framer, a master printer, author, wine tour operator, and more recently, a wine importer. Did I miss anything in your resume, Jean?
No, and you put it in the right chronology on top of it. So that's
Yeah,
great.
fantastic. And first of all, I want to appreciate you doing this via Zoom because I know your artistic sensibilities would have liked something a little bit prettier, but such as we do during the days of COVID. So we're just thrilled to have you here. So welcome,
And I,
Jean. Good to see you.
it's great. I feel like I'm interviewed by Howard Stein at the moment. Is it that Howard Stein? The right guy?
Who's that?
Anyway.
Howard
Anyway,
Stern? Is that your thinking?
no, Howard Stern, yes.
Yeah.
If you just need a headphone on your head, and it would be the perfect.
Yeah. I don't quite have the same head of hair, but thank you for saying
No,
that.
no. You need a wig and a headphone. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And anyway, welcome. And I think I'm seeing one of your photographs behind you. Am I right?
Yes, right here. Yeah, one of my most popular photographs. It was published. I don't remember. I mean, many places by Leica. Above all, was a subject on the Leica blog for a while. It's one of my most popular photographs, shot in 1991 in a cafe in Paris. It captures, I think, the dream vision of a cafe in Paris.
Yeah, beautiful. And anyway, since we're talking about your photography, why don't we chat about your history and your journey into wine? Because it is, I think, the most varied history of any importer I know. So let's chat about your background a little bit. How'd you get started in photography? Let's talk about your working your way into the world of wine. I mean, other than as a Frenchman, I know that wine runs in your veins. But other than that, how'd you get into our industry here?
Yeah, so when I was 15 years old, my mother and my stepfather, we took a cruise around the Mediterranean, and I started to do photography during that, just because it was the right thing to do, right? We were traveling across the sea to see the Arab world and things like that. It sounded like I needed to capture that, just like anybody would do. And I caught the virus during that trip, and it never left me. Before long, I decided that I wanted to dedicate my life to photography. I went through 2 schools of photography, and I've been a photographer now for more than 45 years, including notably most of it professionally at a moderately high level. And eventually, what happened is that I ended up. My brother is a real wine man in the family. He's actually my half brother. And the stepfather that I was talking about when we took the cruise was with his father. My brother wasn't born at the time. We have a fairly big difference in age. And so later, my brother didn't know what to do with his life. I knew that his grandfather was a winemaker, etc. I mean, I had been there many times, and I thought, I was already living here by then, and it was in the mid-90s, and although the wine consumption in America was far from what it is now, I was kind of envisioning that in time it would prosper and develop. And I was telling him, you know what? At some point there will not be enough wine in the world to satisfy everybody once the American kicks in and the Chinese and this and that. It might be a good idea for you to go into winemaking. And he listened for once and went to a school of winemaking in France. And he ended up actually not on the production side, he ended up on the commercial side. Was hired by, which actually by now is actually starting to plant some vines and create a small production of his own. But for 25 years, he's been working for a major wine producing négociant in the Rhone Valley. And eventually, these folks hired me to do some photography for them and develop their website, etc. So that was roughly 10 years ago. And eventually, a little after that, I went into doing something that I've always wanted to do. When I moved here almost 30 years ago, I encountered a few people here and there. We were almost students. My wife was just a grad student at the time, or I'd been a grad student not long ago. And so we were going into all those parties like youngsters like you are still going probably. And there were people who were telling me, hey, oh, Jean-Christian, you're French. That's unbelievable. You know, at the time, there probably was less French people than there is now here. So it was still somewhat exotic to be French in this area. And they were telling me, wow, that's wonderful. You know, I've never been to France, but there's something that I really would like to do, is to go to France with you. And I was thinking, what? You want to go to France with me? Why? I mean, you know, it's something that's foreign to a French person, you know, because we don't do this kind of thing like Americans do, who want to be guided and that kind of thing. So if we go to America, we want to discover America on our own, not with an American who lives there. So, but that stuck to my mind because it happened more than once. And I thought, well, you know what? This might be a way to finance going back to France with my kids and this and that. And so in 2016, it was really time for me to get into that because the kids were almost graduating from high school. So if I wanted to immerse them in the French culture, it was high time to do that. And I realized that maybe instead of taking America to just see France, I could do some wine tours because I knew a guy who had a wine shop, and he could probably find customers who were interested in that. And I had just done that job for my brother's company, and so I could see how to put all these pieces together. And that's how it started. I did a tour like that. It worked fairly well. And eventually I grew. I discovered that if I want to keep doing it, I needed to import the wine and develop my own importing wine business. And that's how we arrived to today.
So your brother looked into becoming a winemaker and your stepfather was a winemaker. Do you see a connection between the art of photography and the art of wine, just in terms of the soul of an artist and the ventures of creation, really?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that winemaking is actually a very difficult endeavor, and there is something that it has to do with intuition, with the spirit, you know, with the adequation of a grower and its environment, its region, its culture, the traditions, all things like that. And that's where it meets art. Because in art, we do, in a different way, we take some of the same consideration into account when we produce something. So there's definitely a link. There's definitely a link technically. Not only am I a photographer, but I'm also a printer, meaning I've spent I don't know how many hours in my life in a darkroom trying to interpret a negative into a print. And when you do a cuvée, it's actually similar. Meaning you take grapes and you try to extract from them something that you transform into a beverage that will be utterly pleasant and well balanced and with all kinds of parameters that you want to take into control. Just like when you print a negative, you want the contrast to be nice, you want the tonality to be nice, you want to interpret certain zones of light and darkness in the proper way, etc., etc. So these are definitely, from a technical standpoint, there is a lot of similarity there. The difference is that when I make a print in the darkroom, even if I am known for being an air splitter, and it may take me an hour and a half to finish the process for one print, which is extraordinary. Most people do it in 10 minutes, if not less than that. But still, an hour and a half, that's short compared to a full year cycle that it takes for a cuvée to come to fruition. That's actually the very challenging thing in winemaking, is that you learn from experimentation, but those experiments take at least 1 year to tell you anything. And
yeah. For winemakers say that at best you have maybe 15, 20 tries at this in your entire life, because you get one try a year. So if you try something new, it might take a few years. Those are a few years. You don't get to do this. You only get to do this once a year. So you better make good guesses in your experimentation, right?
exactly. And you, so that therefore you have to build with the experiments from the previous generations. And so, and of course, you know, you bring your own intelligence, your own intuition in all that, but that can only achieve so much because there's so many parameters, it's so complex. That, you know, that's why it's only an experimentation, not a theory that you, I mean, not something more scientific that you could develop that way.
Right, right. So one thing I forgot to mention in your credits is you're also a film star, and Rodrigo Dorfman did a film about you called Monsieur Contraste. And I'm going to tie this in. So he called you an artist who refuses to compromise for his art in the face of capitalism. So square that circle for me. So when you choose your wines that you're importing, and clearly there's got to be a capitalist thought in terms of what wines will sell, but you don't want to compromise in what you believe is the right sort of wine and the right sort of artistry in wine. So square that circle for me, balancing the art versus really the capitalism of wine importation.
Well, you know, we have to go back a little bit to my history for going into wine importation.
Mm-hmm.
It started by doing wine tours, and that's actually essential because basically every wine that I import, I want to be able to tour. I'm not especially interested. You know, I also work by myself. I don't have any employee. I don't have any rep. Nothing, because the business relies a little bit on me. It's based a little bit on me, my personality, and also, you know, at my age, I don't have the time to build a huge corporation with X reps and blah blah blah. So it's a small business, but relies on me. So therefore, I can only import and distribute so many wines. And so if I am going to import wine, it's one that I want to be able to tour. Because that's still the center of my activity. So therefore, it places the bar a little higher than it would otherwise. It's not enough for me to find a wine that I'm going to pay, say, $10 for. By the time that it arrives here, I'm going to sell it to you for 20, and I'm going to make $2 on it. And, you know, as long as you make a profit, you're good. No. I want to be able to tour that wine, and therefore it has to meet certain criteria, and mostly criteria of excellence. It makes no sense for me to take your good customers to France to tour them through second or third fiddles. I only typically do the very best. I don't necessarily have the absolute number one, although most of the time I do, weirdly enough, but never stops to amaze me because I'm arriving late in the game here. Mm-hmm. How do I manage to have those great producers who typically are the best or one or some of the very best in their categories? But so when it's some of the very best, it's one thing. When it's the best, which happens more often than not, then I wonder, wow, what's going on? You know, maybe it's because I live in North Carolina and nobody imports wine from North Carolina, or at least didn't used to until recently. No, but seriously, this has saved me more than once, you know, because these wines were, but it's not even true because most of the wines that I import, I'm the sole importer for the US. So anyway, that's how it is, and I don't really know why that's like that, but I've been able to find wineries that are really exceptional, very good value, and I've lost a little bit the track of what your question was, by the way. I apologize.
I was just asking the balance between maybe is there a push and a pull for you between the pure artistry of the winemaking versus the pure capitalism of being a entrepreneurial businessman in terms of wine importing. Do you feel there's any compromise at all that has to be made?
No, because at the end of the day, I practice what I call good capitalism, is when you don't let yourself being corrupted by greed or this kind of thing. I try to do the right thing. So I will only import wines that I think will add to the equation, will add to the global portfolio of what's available in North Carolina. I'm not going to bring a wine just because I can sell it and make a profit on it. That doesn't interest me. First of all, I mean, some people have told me that I'm a decent wine salesman. I personally think I suck. I know I see good salesmen, and I think, wow, I wish I was as good as they are. So, in other words, I can only sell what I believe in, and I'm a passionate salesman. So maybe my passion is able to convince people here and there, but other than that, I can only sell what I believe in, and so that takes care of what you allude to. If I believe in something, yes. And then not only in believing, what does that mean? That means that it's a wine that is different enough from what's already available. That's typically better than what's available. That's at a price point that is going to be affordable. I also historically have not done too many really super high-end wine. Like in Bordeaux, for instance, there is all kinds of classified appellations. First of all, I don't find that. I'm just not interested in that. I'm interested in wine. Actually, some of my tour, not to be the Bordeaux wine, the Bordeaux tour, but even the Rhone tour is the same. But there's more examples of that in Bordeaux, that's all. We spend our time comparing really super expensive wine with affordable wines, and people decide whether the price difference is worth it for them or not. And actually, it's not uncommon that the cheaper ones are better than the expensive ones. And that's what I'm about, is to try to find wines that are that make people see that they don't necessarily have to spend a real whole lot of money,